Okay, you guys are right, have reached Jeff Indyke, and this is another commentary. Whoa, let me shut that off. That's actually the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Wow, that stuff is great. Ah, it's a little blurry in here. What I want to talk about is another fantastic subject that I recommend. You know, I meet a lot of guys. I hang out a lot over at Sam Ash, and so there's a lot of drummers who they come in, and, a lot of times I'm kind of like a social guy. I like to talk to people. Some people recognize me, some people don't. Hopefully, the people that recognize me have something good to say, about my television show or my YouTube segments or, But anyway, so a lot of times, we just kind of get into different conversations on different things. And, I'll say, wow, you ever hear, of Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Billy Cobham. And a lot of these young guys have no idea who I'm talking about because they really haven't explored that. So what I wanted to suggest to you guys is listen to as many great drummers but as you can. All of them. Make that kind of part of your listening diet, so to speak. But you got to go back in time, though. A lot of young guys they don't go back in time. They pretty much kind of just stay in the present. So the drummers that they're listening to, and that they kind of base their influences off of, are guys of now. But if you go back a decade, and then another decade, and then another decade, now you have to, if you want to explore all the drummers of history, you got to go back probably about. Well, if you go back 100 years, you'll start to, there was Baby Dodds, who was actually one of the very first trap drummers that did a lot of Louis Armstrong stuff. But he didn't really do a lot of stuff on the set, because back in those days, they didn't have the technology to record drums. And I don't know when they actually created the first foot pedals, where you actually had the bass drum with a tom-tom mounted and a snare and then the hi-hat. I really don't know when that's invented. If you guys know, let me know. I'm really interested in that. I can tell you this, Louis Bellson invented the double bass drum concept. He invented it. It was an interesting story. He told this story on Tom Snyder. He was on Tom Snyder many years ago with Pearl Bailey, his lovely wife. They were on together, and Tom Snyder had asked him a little bit about his history in drumming, and he said that he was in I think he was in elementary school, and he was starting to play the drums because his dad, I think, had a music store, and he visualized the way he had to do an art project, and the art project turned out to be he drew the schematic and the concept of the double bass drum concept. And it was funny, he went to a couple of drum companies with the idea later, and they told him to go to the moon with Will Rogers, that he was not thinking realistically. But he was the first guy to actually set up two bass drums. Later on, a lot of guys covered that. I don't play double bass, but I love to listen to guys that can play it well. But anyway, so here's the thing that I want to recommend. Go back in history and listen to all, the different songs that some of these drummers played, the styles. Of course, drum solos were always cool. Drum solos aren't everything, though. But, some of the great drummers do some really, really good solos. Yesterday, I can't believe it, I was on the way home, and I had on this rock station here on Long Island. I think it was 94 or something. And they do a lot of the classic rock type stuff. And what the heck comes on? Moby Dick comes on, and I'm going like, oh my God, it was the original studio version of Moby Dick. Now, when Bonham did it right on Song Remains the Same, he went into a much longer solo. I mean, it was fiery. But on the original studio record, it was sort of a short type thing. What he did on that was so incredible. Now, if you listen right to that solo, there's an example. Bonham, all right, I really think Bonham, and I don't think Bonham ever really did any interviews, at least not to my knowledge. So he was never interviewed by Modern Drummer. It's too bad he wasn't. Maybe you're right if he had. It's really unfortunate when Bonham left us. But when you listen right to some of those, those tom-tom type things, or when he took his snare drum off, his snares off, and then played the melodies on the snare drum with different accents and different counter type things, he was sounding right a lot like Gene Krupa there. I don't know right if he had listened to Gene or not, but I would venture to say that he might have. You know, there was a definite influence there. So Bonham probably spent a lot of time listening right to some of the great jazz guys way before him. But the great part about Bonham is he really didn't have a reference point. There weren't a lot of drummers right that were doing that kind of drumming. So that's why Bonham's style was so original. So what I'm recommending to you guys and girls out there, or anybody who's playing any instrument, listen to as many of the great players as you can find. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the guys that you should research and try to find recordings, try to find solos. If they put out about any instructional type things, try to find that. Now, I'm just doing this off of the top of my head, so I may not cover every drummer that I want to suggest that you guys listen to. But I'm going to start off from the very beginning. Papa Joe Jones. You want to listen to, of course, to Buddy Rich. His whole career's worth of drumming. Gene Krupa, Roy Haynes, Louis Bellson, of course, Sir Louis Bellson, of course, Speedy Rufus Jones. I think he played with Duke Ellington. He played double bass. Butch Miles, Les DeMiro. I guess I'm staying in a jazz idiom. Of course, Baby Dodds. Anything that you could find on Baby would be spectacular, because he was one of really the first drum set players. You know, it's funny, right? Well, I'll get to that another time. But I was going to say, you know, the Hot 7 recordings I'm playing to, there were these little cymbal splashes here and there that you hear that weren't me. Those were Baby Dodds. His overdubs that he did, but he didn't play drum set on the recordings that I'm playing to. That's why I chose to play to them. That's a whole other topic. Okay, so let me go on a little past that. You have, of course, John Bonham. Bill Bruford from Yes, unbelievable. Alan White, unfortunately, he has left us, but he played with Yes after. Carl Palmer from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Unbelievable. He's still just totally whipping his sticks in unbelievable directions. Well, I mentioned Billy Cobham, Lenny White, Steve Gadd, Dave Weckl, Vinnie Colaiuta. I don't know if I pronounced that right. The late great Don Famularo. Listen to his impressionisms. You guys can listen to me if you want. I don't know if I should be up there with those guys, but I have a good time. And follow us around, get as many of these recordings as you can. I don't have my list handy. Maybe one day I'll go through that. Drum Magazine many years ago, and I'll finish with this. I didn't mention everybody. You guys have to go back in time and figure it out for yourself. And then, of course, also, too, the type of music. Oh, by the way, in the heavier rock idiom, you had, I don't want to leave out Alex Van Halen, of course. He's fantastic. I love the way he plays his songs. Lars Ulrich, Tommy Aldridge. Oh, there's so many guys. So, find to write those things, and then, decide on the stuff you really like. If you really don't like it, you don't have to spend that much time. But I find to write that the more I've listened to the great drummers, the more influence that I took. So I have a lot of all these other guys in my playing. So that's it. Listen to as many people as you can, and enjoy the experience of traveling through time. And we'll talk more. Peace.